Welcome back, you're here with Nate 28 and this is another Crossbeats production. So basically this tutorial slash review kind of, I guess it's more about compression more than anything else, but I had a question on my channel which was from a previous video I just did last night, and that was about the SSLG bus compressor. Now, the question was, do I prefer the SSLG over the API 2500? In essence, there are two different types of compressor, and they definitely are different in sound. And I honestly don't know whether or not you could really compare the two or not. But in the sense of the fact that they're both bus compressors, that's, I guess, where they come parallel and in line with each other. But they have a lot of different characteristics, and I feel like they do different things on a bus. So between the two, basically this SSL bus, I wanted to just quickly give you an understanding of first setting up your bus compressor and understanding what you kind of need to do before you put a bus compressor on, or at least what you need to work towards before you're putting a bus compressor on. Because, you know, when you're laying a bus compressor onto your master bus and you're trying to tame your transients, you start to find out that if your transient and your dynamic range are all over the place, then it's really hard to tame your master bus and your bus compressor how you want it to sound. So what I found in my mix, at least for this tutorial, I want to show you that with the drums and with my bass, I've done a kind of simple technique, but what I've done with this other compressor here, this is the Elysia mastering compressor actually. Now, like I said, and like I always say, don't limit yourself, be creative. But this particular compressor, I didn't use it so much for the compressor feature, but I used it for the soft clipping feature. So this feature down here, this is called a soft clipping feature. It sort of works similar to, I guess, a limiter, but it doesn't raise the volume. It actually sort of compresses, but clips the actual level. It's great for taming your drums. It's great for taming things that are high transient. It's great for taming a bass or whatever it might be that you feel like is taking over your mix. So in this particular mix, what I've done first before I actually even put a bus compressor on my bus was I tamed my kick and actually my whole drum kit, and I tamed my bass. That's the two things that I controlled first with this type of limiter, soft clipping limiter there. And then once I got those two tamed, I put my bus compressor on. So what I'll do, and I'll just show you for the level as well. I've just got this level meter on here just so you can see the kind of levels that I'm getting, because it's a bit hard to see down here. And plus it's a bit easier to mix when you've got some kind of levels going on. And I actually will do a review on this Brainworks level meter because I just bought that today and it's really good. So anyway, let me get back to it. So with this compressor, I'll first play it without it and then I'll play it with it, and I'll just show you exactly kind of what it's doing, and I'll explain the settings that I've decided to take on it and all that sort of stuff. So let me just play this track. It's another track you've already probably heard if you're on my channel a lot. So let's go through that right now. Okay, so like I said in the mix, it's quite important to get your levels all set kind of right. And there's other videos on how to control your transients and stuff like that. I'm sure there's a load of videos on how to use compression and techniques behind compression. But I'm going to do a whole lot more videos on this channel. I just need to get around to it. It's just really hard when I've got other stuff to do as well. But I love doing stuff like this for you guys because it really does. It helps you guys out, and it also is beneficial to share information. I really feel like, you know, if you've got information that you know or you've learned, it's really beneficial to help other people that are still coming up in the game. So I myself am no technique master, but I definitely know some things over the years. I've started to learn some certain things, and it's definitely good to share that with people that are passionate about music. So anyway, so let me stop babbling on, and I'll get straight into this. So as you can hear, the mix sounds fairly good. It's not 100% there. I'd say it's probably about maybe 70-80% possibly. But there's still some kind of stuff that I want to do to it, and I want to get the guitar to really stick out. Like the guitar itself, I kind of did a little bit of work on it before this video, but I didn't get a whole lot done because I just wanted to really show you guys this particular compressor and the technique that I've used. So let me just put the SSL bus on, and I'll just disable it so it's not working, and I'll just turn it on and off, and you can hear the difference between what's happening and what's not happening. Okay, so what I was doing there was I was playing with the threshold, I was playing with the makeup gain. I really didn't level match this too much to go comparing level matching, but you know, there was a slight volume increase and I did notice that. But with the release, I've got that set to auto, I didn't change that. The attack settings at 30 milliseconds, and I messed around with the ratio a bit. What I found with this compressor, especially the way that I guess it's set up, it doesn't have a mix dial. So if you're going to do mixing the, your parallel compression kind of thing, if you want that stuff to go on, you can actually do that in Studio One. I might actually just do a video on how you do that. But you know, if you want to do a mix on the compressor there, you can do that. Otherwise, on this actual hardware, emulation hardware unit, you cannot do that on its own. Whereas the difference with the new UAD 2500, the API 2500, you can do a mix on it. It's got a mix dial. I do have another similar kind of bus compressor, which is made by Native Instruments, which I believe is designed by Softtube. But that is the solid bus. It's very similar, I guess, in the way that it works. And of course, obviously, it's set up similar kind of fashion. But this does have a wet and dry dial. So if you have Native Instruments and you've got one of the complete 9 or complete 10 or 11, I think it's up to now. If you've got one of those, you should have this bus compressor. Or even if you've got Machine, you should have this bus compressor as well, because I'm pretty sure it comes now standard with Machine 2.0 or 2.1 and whatever it's up to now. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys, just so if you knew that you had that or you didn't know you had that, you could start using it. But anyway, this is the one that I was just comparing. So the SSLG, which is from UAD. Now, my opinion on this compressor, I did a comparison a while ago with the Waves one and the Native Instruments one, and also this one. So between the three, I kind of decided at the end that this one to me sounded the best. Now, at the end of the day, it comes down to preference, and I think the Waves one sounds really great as well. I mean, they all pale in comparison to a real hardware unit, to be honest, but as something that's a plug-in, it's probably the best I think you're going to get as far as SSL. Maybe the Slate Digital one might be comparable to this as well. I haven't used that, but I've seen it before and I've heard it on other people's mixes. So, you know, it's all preference of choice, really. I'm not going to say there's one better than the other because there isn't. It's just personal taste, and that's what it comes down to. So, anyway, this compressor, it's quite a simple setup. There's not a whole lot to learn really on it. So, as you can see, like I said before, there's the attack settings, the release settings, the dial in, the ratio amount, and your threshold, and your makeup gain. That's it. And down here, there's an auto fade button if you're going to do an auto fade on your track, but otherwise, that's all that's used for. And the in and out. So that's pretty much it. This compressor is straightforward stuff. So if you're starting to learn compression, it's probably one of the better ones to use if you don't know much about compression. The one thing that obviously you need to know though is how to tame your transients prior to this compressor, and how to get your track to sound, I guess, full and thick and not all crazy with the dynamics, because, you know, like I said before, this compressor doesn't handle the dynamics that way. There are other compressors out there that can do that, but this particular compressor doesn't do that well. I don't feel like it does anyway. I feel like when it's getting distortion in the compressor, it really starts to distort, and the distortion sound doesn't sound good. So I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Now, especially with the auto setting, it really has trouble adapting to the transients or the BPM of your track, I guess, in that essence. But, you know, some compressors handle distortion quite well, and they don't distort a lot, but I feel like this particular one, just for some reason, it does it. And it seems like it's something to do with the SSL anyway, because even with the Native Instruments one, you know, when I slam this one, it's doing the same exact thing. It starts to distort, and maybe that's just the sound of the SSL in general. But I know that I've heard actual hardware emulations of this plugin, and it didn't sound that way. So I don't know exactly what causes it, to be honest. It might just be the way they emulated it or whatever. But anyway, let me just show you what I'm talking about. I'll just put this one in the same kind of order. That to me is actually not a bad sounding compressor. So if you have that, you know, by all means use it. It's really actually quite good. So reason why I wanted to start this video anyway was this SSL. So let's just play around with it for a bit. I'll get the kind of taste that I feel like is desirable, and then I'll just show you a few techniques that I would normally use on this, and leave it at that. So hopefully this is a little bit helpful for you guys to understand compression at least, and, you know, pre your master compressor, understand how to kind of set yourself up in that way. Now, just actually briefly before I go too far, if you don't have this, it's sort of using like limiter fashion type of thing. So if you're going to get a limiter, like a standard limiter like this, you could kind of do similar kind of thing by limiting your track. Say, example, I took this off here and I want to control my drums. I'll just solo my drums. Turn my limiter off. Now, before I go too far, actually, my kick is probably the most dynamic and the loudest thing, apart from the snare and a few other parts in the drum track there. But on the kick itself, I've actually got Neutron, which is controlling the EQ. It's got a exciter and a compressor, and that compressor is set to a 5.1 ratio or 5 ratio. And it's got quite a decent amount of the mix going on, so it's controlling some of the transient already. But you know, the rest of that I tend to control with a a limiter. So as you can see, it hops over 12 sometimes, minus 12. But if I put this on, and I've got my compressor here as well on the master bus, so that's controlling some of the transients. And the other thing that I had was this. So I guess it depends in which order you want to put it as well. I feel like in that order it sounds a bit more clear, and you can't hear the distortion as much. So yeah, I mean that's one thing. Like, control your drums if you have drums in your track. Control those. Control your bass. You know, just control things that you feel like are taking over the mix too much. And then once you get those kind of things tamed, then you get to your bus compressor and you can just put a bus compressor on there and just really don't even touch the needle hardly. So as you can hear, the drums sound quite clean. The entire set of drums there sound fine. But then you got to think about, okay, when you're adding additional things in, say for example the bass, now it's starting to affect the compressor. Okay, so everything that you want to mix in, try to do it in context. Like I just did there, I didn't want to take out too much of the low end off that guitar because that low end on the guitar actually plays in other parts of the track. I mean, you could set up automation if you wanted to put more low end in a certain part of the track. I guess that's one thing that you could do, but I like to have everything kind of sitting nice and neat and filling each other's position and filling the spaces, you know, with the low end. Don't always take out too much of the low end on your guitars or your snare or whatever it might be, because sometimes you start to lose the characteristics of those particular instruments if you take out low end. But I mean, this video is more about the compressor, but I want to show you how every single track in your mix is going to affect the way your compressor is starting to work, because obviously each individual track has frequencies that are using other parts of frequencies within the other parts of the instruments that you have in your track. So you got to be real careful, and that's kind of why Neutron's kind of awesome for that, because you've got that masking feature which you can just turn on and it shows you, you know, where you're masking your tracks at and stuff like that. But you know, if you didn't have Neutron and you just wanted to mix your track with a normal EQ, you got to really pay attention to how the instruments start to blend together. And this also affects later on down the track when you put a master bus compressor on there, because you know, when you're compressing your track itself, it's compressing the whole entire mix. So when you start bringing down transients and you start creating less dynamic range within the entire mix, you want things to sit right, and you know, you want to be able to hear the instruments that are in your mix, not have things disappear in the mix. So I hope this tip video, you know, review kind of slash, it's not really a review, but I hope the tip video helped you guys a lot, and I hope that if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments, because you know, I want to help you guys out, and I want to do the best that I can at producing these videos for you guys. So Without further ado, I'll let you guys go, and hope you enjoy your afternoon or morning wherever you are in the world, and peace.